Hey there. So I am starting a series that I'm going to be doing throughout the month of April about our experience with the autism journey and the Sunrise program. A lot of what I'll talk about will have to do with the Sunrise program, but some of it will just be in general. And if you have other questions, please always feel free to ask. A friend actually asked me to share this with her group called the True Love Group, which is a group of parents who have children on the autism spectrum that are sharing support and information with each other. And I think it's so cool that they were interested in hearing a little bit more about our story. So I wanted to share with them. And I'm doing this one on Facebook Live so that I can share it with lots of my connections and audience. I know a lot of people that I connect with and am in touch with through Facebook are related to the autism community and have come into contact with me through different Facebook groups, different friends of friends, other people that have referred them to me. So I always am an open book, and I really like sharing our journey through autism and what it's been in our life. So I am happy to share with all of you and hope that it's helpful in some way. Please always feel free to ask questions if you have them. So I have a list of questions that this group put together, and I'm going to be answering them in various different videos because they asked a lot of really awesome questions. And the first one is, can you tell us a little bit about how you started the Sunrise program? And do you think the Sunrise program is the main major contribution to Gavin's recovery? Meaning that, or have some therapies helped? So, huge issue here. Looking back to our original diagnosis, Gavin was diagnosed between age 3.5 to 4. We started looking into a diagnosis and what was going on with his development around age 3.5. We went to the pediatrician's office, and I said, he's not responding to us, he's not answering questions, his language seems to be sort of stagnant, something's going on. And they then referred us to a speech and hearing evaluation, a speech and language evaluation, and a hearing evaluation. And his hearing was tested, and he had a very hard time even doing the testing. Being in the enclosed room and putting headphones on was a huge deal for him. So that triggered them, I think, to start thinking about, are there sensory issues going on? He did the speech and language assessment, and there was definitely delays identified there with receptive language as well as expressive language. So how he was receiving information as well as expressing himself. More delays with the expressive language. He could understand and respond on, pointing to things or identifying things without language better than he could verbally express himself. So once he was done with the speech and language assessment, they referred him to occupational therapy assessment, which looks at fine motor and gross motor skills, looks at the sensory issues that were going on, because that was really identified through the hearing evaluation and him not being able to even tolerate putting on the headphones, hearing the sounds, responding in the way that they wanted him to respond when he heard sounds or different things that were part of the hearing and audiology exam. So as a mom, I was going through this process thinking, oh my gosh, there's so many things going on here. How did I miss these things? How did I not put this together? And as a therapist, I was a social worker and a children's therapist at the time too. All these red flags started going off, and I started realizing there's something drastically wrong here. There's something really huge going on for my child. How did I not piece these things together? But Gavin had so many strengths and could do so many things. So his skills and his development was all over the place, and it was very uneven in a lot of ways. So he had some really advanced skills with reading and word identification and some of the sort of academic skills that were really great at around age 3.5. But then other more social engagement skills that were very much behind. And then some of the sensory issues and things that came up as well. We started to identify these are all meaning something. There's a reason why he is not doing some things, or why he's reacting so strongly to loud sounds, not doing things and wanting to do things in exactly the same way. When we would come home, he would walk around the yard in the exact same way, or want to walk down the block and then across the street and back up the block. And we just thought, oh, he's just kind of a quirky kid and he likes to do those things. But they were much more of an issue than we realized, and there was a reason for them. So as we put this all together, my light bulbs just started going off that, oh my gosh, there's a diagnosis, there's a name for this. And so I started researching myself as a therapist and as a mental health professional. I was able to, access information about this and put it together. And it was emotionally very challenging. It was hard to recognize how there's so many things that he's not doing. How did I not see some of these things? And especially then, as I started to look back, and as I looked into more and more research and read more things that identified about eye contact and not saying, mom or dad, not coming and showing you things, and started to look back at old photos and old videos and really recognize some of the things that were lacking that I hadn't identified. That was very hard at first, and it was a lot of time that I spent crying and researching and beating myself up for having missed certain things for so long. But we jumped in head first with some of the therapies that were recommended to us, and some play therapies, some behavioral therapies, some speech therapies, and occupational therapy were all identified. And so I started to research like crazy and make contact in our community with what we could get him involved in and what we could start doing at home. And we started doing a play-based therapy because I wanted to do something that we could do at home to help. And so we started doing that. And it was called the Play Project. We worked with a local agency to help learn how to do that. And I liked it a lot because it was something that we could do. It was a way that we could start to interact with our child and engage with him. As I researched, Gavin also had a lot of food allergies and I think internal health, immune issues going on. So I was looking into biomedical approaches as well. Some parents do look into that, some do not. For us, it made sense, and I definitely felt it was necessary to look into dietary changes we could do, different changes with his immune system and strengthening that, looking at detoxing. And so as I went to a conference on that, there was a presentation on the Sunrise program. And Ron Kaufman, the actual original Sunrise child, spoke at this conference. But before he went on, he was there with his booth and, big posters and book and everything. And he said, I'm just chatting with him, and he said, yeah, that's me on the book there. And it was this child who was glazed over and completely not engaged with the world around him. And I was like, what do you mean? How's that you? Like this man here in a suit and tie and talking to us and friendly and engaged and all of this. And I couldn't grasp how could be him. And he said, yes, that's me as a child. And my parents created and originated the Sunrise program. And I was fully recovered by age 5.5. And I was enthralled. I could not wait to hear him speak and share about the Sunrise program. So I went to his presentation and hung on every word, and I just had a feeling. I said, I need to know more about this. I need to know how I can do this with my son because it just makes sense. It seems like it feels right, like the thing to do. And so I went, my husband and I poured over what we could learn about the Sunrise program and talked with the family representative, family counselor there to ask our questions and researched a lot and talked to him a lot. And then we went to Massachusetts to the Autism Treatment Center of America and learned for a week, for 5 days, how to implement the Sunrise program at home. We started that program a couple months later. And so much has changed in our life since then. This was when Gavin was about 5 years old, and he's now 13, and his life is completely different than what we were fearful of or thought would happen or scared of would happen at that time. But I will go into a lot more about that in some of my other videos, but I wanted to kind of give this background first and then see if I can answer this first question that the group asked. So, do I think it was the major contribution for his recovery? Gavin, I don't know that you would say he's considered recovered yet. There are still challenges that he has. There are still some social issues and things that we're working on, and we continue to do that and believe in the recovery process every day. The major contribution, I do think a lot of it had to do with deciding to run a Sunrise program, but first and foremost, it was in deciding to implement the Sunrise philosophy and the Sunrise attitude and belief system. If you try to implement the Sunrise program techniques without embracing and looking at your own belief system and whether you are choosing judgment, whether you're choosing acceptance, whether you're choosing to come from a place of love or believing in your child's potential and the possibilities for your child's life, it matters. It matters tremendously. And the biggest thing that I can say is if you're going to implement anything regarding the Sunrise program, it would be to look at your own beliefs and look at your own philosophy when you are thinking of interacting or engaging with your child. You don't have to do the techniques perfectly. You don't have to do the techniques at all. If you choose to run a different type of program, a behavior-based program, or some other type of interventions or program with your child, that's great. That's part of the Sunrise program, is that you get to decide, and that's why I believe so much in the expertise of parents to choose for their child what they truly feel is the best. But if anything, I would encourage parents to look at their attitude and their beliefs and how they come into their engagement and their relationship with their child. I think that's the biggest reason that we've seen a lot of the progress that we've seen. I also think that the Sunrise Playroom and the removal of other distractions had a huge part in helping Gavin to be more grounded and less overwhelmed with so much stimulation and other sensory input. And I think that the overall work over time on his sensory regulation with occupational therapy, as well as the fine motor and some of the gross motor planning, had a huge impact as well. He was able to then tolerate more of the school experience and be in a school setting and be successful there. He does have some individual support to do that, and he's at the process where we're figuring out how much more support he really does need in the school setting aside from his typical teacher, and which is huge. That's tremendous that he's gotten to that point. But I would definitely say that the biggest piece for us was the embracing of truly looking at our own beliefs and how we wanted to come into our interactions with him, with love, with acceptance, with non-judgment, and creating our own true happiness. Right now, right in that moment with him when he was struggling, sometimes screaming, sometimes not wanting to be in the playroom, sometimes even becoming sort of volatile or sometimes even aggressive or just angry. Even then, being okay with it and being as calm as we could. And this takes work, and it takes practice, and it takes a lot of effort to look at your own attitude in that moment. But it's worth it and it does help and it does matter. So thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on my live recording or later, and also which will be on my YouTube video later as well. I'm going to keep it to that today, but I will definitely be adding further videos in the series and sharing them with you. And Dream, it looks like you got on. Hopefully you were able to see. Here's the first of my series that I'll be sharing with all of you. So I hope you'll go back and watch this if you are catching it later. And thanks so much. Please ask any questions anytime. I am really willing to share, and I'll talk to you later.